the Sergeant at Arms and the Head of Protocol. I'm here to check and confirm the quorum for the presiding officer. And I also want to request our guests to mute and also take control of the noise around your space and the movement of people. At 10 o'clock exactly, I will invite the presiding officer, Honorable Mlibo Koboshiane, to take the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Volume, please.
Welcome to a world open for adventure. Discover a place where the sun outshines the sunset as the waves roll the beat of an African drum. Explore a land where the great beasts stampede over plains, which echo the songs of its people. Experience rejuvenating hues of blue, green, and gold as freedom unwinds your horizons. Dare to chase life over the edge and catch it up in a spirited rush as a lifetime's adventure begins.
Excursion, honorable members, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to take our formal program now. And then allow me to say happy Africa, happy commemorative day since the constitutive act of establishing the Organization of African Unity in 1963. We are still concluding and still moving forward in that progression. I think everybody is able to hear as we are speaking under the theme, linking the urbanization management efforts of different role players towards that where we're going to look at the CPA sub-branch, this Honorable Speaker of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, and acknowledging the guests that are going to be acknowledged as time goes on. And I think, honored members, I just want to confirm that everybody is in a position to go through and see the program. We are now officially going to start our program. But let me just take this opportunity once again to acknowledge the Honorable Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, of which I believe there is an indication that he is going to be absent for a moment. Honorable Kasangu, a former Minister of Energy, Republic of Kenya, and currently Ambassador Charity Ngilu, members of Parliament, Parliament of Tanzania, members of CPA Regional Secretariat who have already connected our head office. And let's also acknowledge our provincial legislature, honorable speakers and deputies, and the delegations that might have joined this important gathering. The members of Limpopo Provincial Legislature, honorable deputy speaker, I think we are still going to go through the formal acknowledgement, but let me take this opportunity to indicate that we are now officially starting this program. The House of Traditional Leaders in the province of the Eastern Cape and the entire executive that have already connected, and the Secretary General Community of Nations in South Africa. I'm informed that the SG is also here. The delegation from Zambezi Mining Services, Zambia, is also joining this important session. Members of the Provincial Legislature, Eastern Cape CPA sub-branch, the Chief Whip who is leading that delegation, religious fraternity, business fraternity, and the representatives of high institutions of learning, youth of our country, women and disabled groups that are here. Please be at ease. And now I am going to honorable request that this platform be officially open, and we must receive also the welcoming remarks from the President of the Eastern Cape CPA branch, who is also the Honorable Speaker of the Provincial Legislature, Honorable Souls August. May I then thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Program Director, Deputy Speaker of the Provincial. We have a capable team of experts who will help us to dissect the complex topics for the webinar today and add it to our guest engagement and a successful webinar. You are all welcome to this important webinar, which will definitely go a long way in shaping the future and the destiny of our country, the continent, and all her people. Nkosi baie dankie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President, for those kind words of welcome, Honorable Bonyana.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, everybody who is following these proceedings in various media platforms. Honorable members, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce the following esteemed presenters who have this Association of South Africa. A Deputy Limited, Barbara, presented a paper on beyond free school feeding in northeastern Uganda in Kampala. The next person, honorable members, is going to be Professor Mugome Alpheus Masoga. Professor Masoga, honorable members, is the Dean of the Arts Faculty at the University of Zululand here in South Africa. He holds a doctoral degree in African orality from Free State University. His principal research fields are African indigenous knowledge, ritual, and religion. And Tate Mugome's research in African indigenous research and decolonialities follows a 25 years of experience. He has managed to develop Afro-centered approaches and frames for conducting research in and with local communities, pushing for a strong place of local communities in research and challenging researchers to negotiate space in their work. Honorable members, Professor Mugome is widely published in peer-reviewed journals and book chapters. He is the book series editor of the series publication working under the title Knowledge Pathing, Multi, Inter, and Transdisciplining in Social Sciences, published by OSS. That is Professor Mugome Alpheus Masoga. The last person, honorable members, that I present to you at the University, the Institute for Global Dialogue at UNISA, both addressed in methodology and on various subjects.
Honorable Mbonyana. I think something now is affecting our network. Yes.
I think I lost you, honorable members, but it was the last. I was almost at the tail of my presentation. Professor Siphamandla Zondi, honorable members, holds a doctoral degree from Cambridge University. Honorable Deputy Speaker, andicinga into yobana umsebenzi ubundithume wona uphelele lapha, ndiyabulela kakhulu.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for presenting our esteemed presenters so well. And I think those that are part of this important session will appreciate the level of this important international platform that we have created, especially celebrating Africa Day. But Honorable President, taking our presenters, we've got in the delegation Mr. Abdul Olutunji, who is the Secretary General from the Community of Nations in South Africa, Nelson Mandela University, and they will be part of the discussion and give us some insights about the topic that we've already presented. Dr. Uba, the development economist, governance and public finance management, and chairman of ACUF in Nigeria, is also part of this important session. Our own Honorable MEC for Human Settlements in the province of the Eastern Cape, Honorable Nongeba Konsiwe, at the Department of Human Settlement, Eastern Cape, Republic of South Africa. She has joined us as well. Honorable Kasungu, the former Minister of Energy, as I've already acknowledged, and the current Ambassador of Kenya in Tanzania, and the Honorable of Kenya. Also, we acknowledge and welcome, as you have already indicated, Honorable President. Honorable Deputy Speaker of National Assembly, which is our national branch, is unable to connect because of fever he's suffering from, but we acknowledge that the Honorable Deputy Speaker of Gauteng is also certain to join us in a few minutes. The Deputy Speaker of Limpopo Provincial Legislature, Honorable Azwindini Jeremiah, Honorable Dingando, the Chief Whip, Honorable Sekutu Monica Muchadi, and Honorable Wisani Goodman. All that delegation has connected in this important webinar. Ms. Kathleen A. Gathering, Ms. Nyakan June, the CEO, Timeless Dynamic Services Limited, and the founder of Timeless Women and Wonder Organization, is part of this important platform. As I've already indicated, that Dr. Pius Prinsloo, Pius Kasolo, the CEO of Zambezi Mining Services Zambia, is part of this session. Inkosi, our leader of the traditional leaders in the province of the Eastern Cape, who is also the acting chairperson of Eastern Cape House of Traditional Leaders, and the executive members are also part of this important gathering. Of course, our members of the legislature and other MECs are also present. Abefundis, our religious fraternity, business community, as well as esteemed delegation, is so much important for this webinar. I think it's going to enhance our deliberations and discussions. I'm doing this to ensure that our honorable presenters don't have the trouble of saluting all of them by names, because I decided to acknowledge them in this fashion so that you are at ease as we are going to invite you to the podium. Now we are going to take the inclusive economies to provide the only code to walk us through this important aspect of our society. Ma'am, I'm now taking this pleasure to invite you, as we have been already introduced to this platform. Now it is your time to deliver your message. Thank you very much.
Hear me? Quite audible.
Very clear, very clear.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for doing the greetings for us, because greetings to all your honored guests, and we're quite flattered that they can prioritize us today. And before I start, I just want to show my appreciation. Every time I'm invited by Eastern Cape, it becomes a priority. So I always look back at Eastern Cape to look what is happening. So I always look forward to the conversations with Eastern Cape, to the extent that we're in a conversation. And this is why the topic today is linking the urbanization management efforts of different role players towards sustainable. From, for example, Italy, I always look at it and actually see Eastern Cape every time I go there, because the bulk of it is rural, just like Eastern Cape. And they have these deep cultural traditions and crafts, which are the rural side of Italy. And they've made it in the world. So I always look at Italy and I say, this is Eastern Cape as I see it. The phenomenon with the Eastern Cape, with Italy, with the pandemic, is that before that, the rural towns were almost becoming non-towns, because people have left to the north of Italy for jobs. Villages like Castel Borghi or opportunity. With the pandemic, the remote work has become that new normal now. Because of the pandemic, people can work anywhere. People don't have to go to offices. And so what we found is that what people came to this part of Italy, which is the south and central, for holidays, or sometimes back to their homes, they have decided they can spend more time and work actually going back and buying homes in what is now looks like Italy villages. And there's quite an excitement I can imagine from the provincial governments and local leaders of these areas, that there is this kind of, is a benefit of the COVID pandemic. And what follows with this is that they have to do all manner of things, teaching digital skills to this net use data. Effectively, a rural revitalization has become a priority through targeted investments in infrastructure and urban planning. And of course, the lack of healthcare and high-speed transport in these areas becomes an issue. That is now Italy. And seemingly the same observation has been made with countries like Romania, Bulgaria, and Spain. When I looked at this, I also thought that this is probably something that Eastern Cape can look quite closely at and see what of this we can take as well to benefit from a crisis. Because really what it means is that people are benefiting from the pandemic and making the best use of it. What is the difference though with Eastern Cape is that unlike these countries, ours, we have an elephant in the room. And that elephant in the room is a whole program of the apartheid system was quite heavy. And as we do that, as reverse things back to the rural areas and making them more sophisticated, we have to look at this program and actually talk about exactly what it did and how we reverse what is reversible. Apartheid was a very complicated, complex program and very well monitored by its authors to make sure it has a desire put forward. They actually monitored this program very well. What it means is that reversing it means we too have to give our best of intellectual capital. Unfortunately, it also means we have mistakes. The reason I'm bringing up a program director is that the case of Eastern Cape is an interesting one. It is a perfect apartheid plan to subject this particular community to permanent impoverishment. Even if it meant for the government of the day, it cuts its nose to spite its face. But the bigger program only served as a place for labor sending, as a labor sending area to some of the, so they couldn't develop it because it would disrupt that program. And so the exodus of people from Eastern Cape to places like Cape Town, KZN, was a case of desperation for jobs. There was nothing, no opportunities whatsoever. But people generally do not want to be squashed in the shacks in Khayelitsha. They want to come back home. And that is why for Easter or Christmas, you find this big exodus of people going back home and then back to work again in January. They just don't post 70 kilometers and 40 kilometers of which is gravel road. What's important is that it covers most of the history we want to place in the international stage as a showcase for South Africa. We do have a lot of grave sites in this road. King Palo is very important to South Africa and is between and 5 kilometers away. You have Reverend Diosoka, a well-revered intellectual in the world, the first scholar, the first black to go to school. Is buried in this very route on the way to to the coast. You also have your infamous Nongause. Nongause, we cannot hide it. Nongause is our history. It is also in this that all our treasure hunting happens here because we are the wild coast. Most of our shipwrecks happen in this part of the world. The Jacaranda, you have people coming from Europe looking for their pieces of shipwrecks. What I'm saying here, Program Director, is that in the process of punishing this part of the community, agrarian revolution, it is a place to do it. And so this little road of 70 kilometers.
The rural enterprises, emerging entrepreneurship inherited. And important that we need to transform this skewed and de-racialize this economy, as well as ownership of means of production. And all is also in our screen have our own interpreters, Abasebenzisa Izandla, which is our official language also. For those that can also see, it's important that sign language is important in South Africa. And through our screens, we are able to show that. I am getting a sense that on channel 260, people are also requesting to see the faces of presenters, be watching from their sitting rooms and dining rooms at home, watching this important deliberation. May the program be shown, but when presenters are on stage, please take the cameras to them. People are so much keen to engage this conversation and have a facial connection as well. That was the first presentation, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members that have connected. We go straight to item number 4, building local capacity. It is so much important in Africa. And what is it that we can do? And what potential and kind of services that we must expect, especially linking with the theme of the day. May I now invite you, ma'am, to take.
Is found in the eastern part of our African continent. And our population, I should say, is growing at a rate of 3.2% per annum. Kampala, many of you have of about 3 million people, which constitutes and on average in these urban key issues that we planned at from the onset. So you find that in the future, you have challenges on ensuring that these people are actually benefiting from the urban setting, which is actually poorly planned due to their own personal initiatives, private initiatives. So we have this challenge in terms of planning and managing our urban settings. We also have issues whereby the policies that we have been implementing in Uganda, most of them have been the rural development policies, unlike the urban development policies. So these policies have in a way become a challenge and impeded on our progressive planning when it comes to urbanization. We have high levels of poverty resulting from the massive unemployment and the underemployment characteristic of the lack of skills of our people, which at the end of the day renders them unqualified to have gainful employment. So this challenge is also one of the things that we do consider when we are planning urbanization in Uganda. Then the obsolete legislation that has rendered itself ineffective, not even forgetting the multiple land rights that hamper access to land for orderly development. Because in Uganda, we have a number of land tenure systems. We have the freehold, we have the Milo land, then there is also the clan land. This one makes it very, very difficult. In most instances, almost impossible for you to access land, especially that which is under the clan setting, the clan ownership. So these are some of the issues that we put into consideration while planning our urbanization in Uganda. But in any case, I would like to say that for us, the need to build a local capacity to manage urbanization in Uganda, government has to ensure that we partner with all the key stakeholders to develop effective and efficient inclusive urban development policies and strategies for better management of future urban growth. Because we realize that there is no way you can ensure successful urbanization if all the key stakeholders are not involved. And also, we realize that there is need to facilitate the urban dwellers, all the households living in these areas, with selected municipalities to improve their qualitative and quantitative access to municipal services. But to put all of this in place to ensure that we ensure success in our urbanization effort, we have realized that we need to put in place the legal framework. We need to put in place the legal framework and policy that will be able to facilitate orderly urbanization. Some of the policies and the legal framework that Uganda has put in place was the formulation of the National Urban Policy. This was done to ensure the upcoming centers have a guiding policy that they will be following. Then we also have the National Development Plan. As we speak, Uganda is implementing the National Development Plan 3, and this one is simply to ensure structured development from government comes up in order to complement what is listed or what is embedded in the National Development Plan 3 as we speak. We also have we have also reviewed our national housing policy. Since the housing is a core aspect in urbanization, and government in this aspect feels that it's important to have adequate policy in this area. We have also reviewed our building legislation. Equally important, this was to ensure that we build legislation to control the kind of buildings that come up in our urban centers. Formulation of the National Land Use Policy was also done, and the issue of the land management was considered to be equally important, so that the National Land Policy should serve the country, the whole country for this matter, and not only the urban settings. We also enacted the landlord and tenant relationship law, and this was to ensure that there is a harmonious existence of both the landlords and the tenants in all the urban areas, because as per that law, let me give an example. If a tenant defaulted for, say, a week, and yet a week into the month, and yet this person was required to pay the their rent by the beginning of the month, the landlord cannot actually go ahead and evict them. You have to follow a due process, which involves the court process, hearings, until that position where we feel that now the tenant should be evicted on the account of what has been presented before the courts. Then there was also the formulation of the National Slum Upgrading Strategy, which prescribes ways or measures of improving our rural areas into urban centers, because we feel that there are those areas, like I earlier on mentioned, where people came up and established their own settlements without physical planning. So government goes ahead to identify these areas and identify monies to have these areas upgraded from the slums to urban setting. Then we also have a review of our town and country planning law in place. So all these have been put in place as legal and policy measures to help Uganda fully urbanize, but urbanize according to how it should be in accordance with the international standards. One thing that I would also not want to forget to mention is that as we build the local capacity, I think it's important that we also establish what we call the urban development fora, because as I earlier on said that we need inclusive to have a holistic approach while ensuring that we are moving from the slums and urbanizing our areas. We need a holistic approach whereby if you introduced an urban development forum, like I put it, you will have all stakeholders come together and share views on how to move forward. So at the end of the day, they own the process. This is all about consensus building and owning the process towards urbanizing our areas. Registration of all households. This is all that we also took into consideration. Registering household structures and small businesses with numbers and streets. This is what we are now doing to urbanize our areas, because these are places, some of them were constructed without any form of formality, no streets, no house number. But in an urban setting, you feel that it would be much more easier for you to locate a premise, to locate a business, if this place do register households and also accord street names to them. Then the promotion of insecurity. Encourage our people that we need to secure what we call the title deeds, the land titles. If you are in location A, ensure that you go ahead to. In the past, we had challenges whereby you will find 3 or more people claiming the same piece of land. So we decided to promote the acquisition of these land titles to give security to those who own these pieces of land. And we are even gone ahead in Uganda to digitize this tenure system, this security system, the giving or the allocation of land titles, to digitize it in such a way that if you have a piece of land in area A, B, C, D, and you my land and it belongs to me, because it will bring all the details about you while you, after you have input your plot number. So we increasingly promote that tenure security to first of all, ensure safety of people's land, but also to give them parties claiming this particular land. Land is very important when we are talking about urbanization. Then we have also gone ahead to develop appropriate saving-based financial models to enable people access affordable loans. Because if we have gone ahead as Uganda to stipulate that in area A, B, C, these are the only structures that we need to be in this place, we must also put in place avenues that enable people to access monies, aiding structures as by law established. So we ensure that we put in place measures or modalities of providing people with cheap loans, providing people with access to finances, so that they can be able to access finances and be able to modernize and build or put up structures that are befitting and are embedded down in their guidelines as far. Another thing I would like to mention about is that one thing to improve access to services, as well as further the enhancement of capacities of the citizenry, As I said, that we also need to form the capacity building, local area-based residential organizations. Now, this is organized at the local setting, whereby we have key stakeholders from the particular area forming their own organizations where they come together and share ideas on how to improve on their respective communities. Then we also go ahead to educate the urban citizenry, the municipalities on the development strategies, what is required as far as the world standards are concerned. These are some of the things that we are putting in place. Then we avail a detailed slum upgrading strategy to government for planning and priority projects to the urban citizenry, because there are several areas that were created, settlements there, because we have had movements of people from areas that had insecurity into, as we always refer to, slums, because they have come from the rural areas, they have come from other countries. We have the highest number of refugees in Uganda. These people come into the country without prepared housing, without prepared water facilities, the education. So when they come and settle in a particular place, you automatically end up with a slum. So we identify these areas as the local government authorities identify these areas and forward them to the central government for planning and then capitalization of the community upgrading funds. This is also in line with what I was referring to, availing our people with funds to ensure that there is. Then we also develop city development strategies to undertake a detailed slum and municipality profiling exercise, municipal forums and the national urban forums. Because municipal forums are what you may maybe call the local urbanization urban forums, and then the national urban forums, to ensure that whatever you're planning at the local institutional assessment of our local governments. Because like I said, we have fewer numbers of our planners, whereby we end up having a development preceding planning. So we take institutional assessment of the local government capacity to effectively engage in the rights and responsibilities, necessary skills that they need to ensure that they plan better for the local areas. During, through all this exercise, we have had a number of lessons that we have learned from this in our local set, very, very important. Then the income enhancement mechanisms are also an integral part. You cannot have poor people and expect them to fully urbanize an area in line with the physical planning priorities or direction that you have set, because it takes lots of finances to have befitting structures, to have a lot has to do with income enhancement of the people living in that area. The training and skills development empowers to empower meaningful or gainful employment, that slums are the way to go, that you end up with slums. But when you have people that are properly employed, meaningfully being remunerated, these people can afford a building plan. These people can afford to go to the municipalities, log in their building plan and pay the costs for approval and have a proper structure in their areas. So it's the public partnership or people partnership coming into play. It is very, very important. Government alone cannot pull this off. So it's important to have the holistic approach, but as well putting into consideration the PPP, the public-private partnership. Mixed development, that is like the use of mixed development use should be incorporated in the design of maximizing the use of limited land, as well as increasing employment opportunities for the urban dwellers. So these are some of the things that we look for. And the new approach, the new need approach that we recommend is that there is need for a wholly new approach of planning and urban management, moving away from the regulation and control towards the flexible planning instruments that allow authorities to address the real challenges and opportunities posed by urbanization. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude from what our experience is in Uganda, is that the first thing you need to build expertise. Secondly, you need to involve all the key stakeholders. And thirdly, most importantly, is to make finances available for the people to have meaningful urbanization of our areas. Therefore, we recommend that to successfully build local capacity for urbanization needs, we need to provide space for dialogue, the forums that I mentioned. We need to institutionalize capacity building to, at every local government, you need to identify the gaps, the skilling gaps, and have people there that have the necessary skills to move you from where we are to the urbanized world level requirements, and also make resources available, like I put it, to the urban poor to better participate in urban economy. And also we need to change in policy and practice. An inclusive pro-poor urban policy that promotes proactive participatory approaches for a sustainable urban future and ensuring access to the poor, to land, services, and economic activities within urban areas, and above all, to recognize the rights of our people and ensure that we honor everyone's responsibility. In this way, I think we shall reach at a level, or we shall have ourselves reach a level whereby we have meaningful and what I may refer to as a sustainable urbanization of our local areas. So, Mr. Program Director, I think let me end it there for now. I would prefer to have further engagement with our participants, but for now, I think let me end it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this important quality input. I can get Your Excellency from the people who have connected via YouTube, Facebook, and those that are watching you as you are presenting this important, well-prepared presentation. Many people are full of praises. And they are saying, thank you, Ugandan government and the presidency and the president of Uganda for sending to South Africa, in Southern Africa in particular, one of the youngest, capable and distinguished excellencies in your person. And indeed, such is a breath of a fresh air. Please continue doing greater work. Someone is going to thank you, and there's still going to be a conversation that is going to ensue. From the areas that we have touched, urbanization really is inevitable and unavoidable consequence of human development and human movement. And I think the planning capacity, legal framework, policy disposition, housing as a core aspect of urbanization are the issues that we have to deal and discuss immediately after this. Indeed, Africa is rising. Honorable members, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm reliably informed that Professor Masuha is not yet connected, and I'm now requesting that let me take some few aspects of discussions before we go to Professor Zondi, and I think we are still doing well on time. I will request only 3 minutes of shared inputs from the speakers that I'm going to ask, at least to make their presentations as part of discussions, up until I get a signal that he indeed landed in Durban and able to connect with us and make a presentation. Mr. Abdul Alutunji, Secretary General, Community of Nations, may I invite you to take your 3 minutes, and Professor Mbanga is going to be ready immediately after you, and Dr. Uba from Governance and Public Finance Management, Chairman of UKEF, Nigeria. Just a few minutes just to appreciate and make your quick, short summary of your deliberation. May I now take this opportunity to invite you, Secretary General, to make an input. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Program Director. To all the invited guests as well, I say good morning to each and every one of you, and happy African Day to each and every son of the soil of Africa. It's been a pleasure, to be, part of this, sitting again. And I think this is something that, binds us as Africans, and we need to begin to look at things from the ends of how our forefathers used to, do things. And I think it is very, very important in order for us to be able to then improve the life and the standard of living of the African people, it is important for us to then make that livelihood, lifestyle of living, and making everything much easier, for them. And I would like to also, thank your office for always giving us this opportunity to be part of, this engagement. And I think it is something that is we need to do from time to time. We really do not need to restrict these to these important African Day celebration. From time to time that we feel like we need to put some of these discussions on the platform, let us get people from all around Africa, the continent, together, and let us every African person. Once again, I thank each and every one of the participants here, and again, happy African Day to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olatunji. I will now invite Professor Dr. Mbanga to just walk us through. Nelson Mandela University is in the province of the Eastern Cape, one of the best institutions in this province. May I invite you, sir, just to make your quick input and your recommendations.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and also greetings to the honorable members and the esteemed guests on this important occasion. And also I want to echo the same to say Happy Africa Day and back to Africa where we belong. Thank you very much. At this point, Program Director, I think mine will be just to do some little reflection as I was attentively listening to these important speeches presented this morning, which resonate well, I think, with the type of work that we are dealing with in Mandela University. I may just mention that Mandela University is the university that is aspiring to be in service of society. We don't regard ourselves as a university with the professorate who would be sitting in ivory towers. We are an engaged university through our scholarship of teaching and learning, research, and also community engagement. But we don't work alone. We also work with partners, as in governments and also institutions in Africa. We also foreground the importance of Africa to Africa Forum with about 15 African countries participating, in which we are beginning to exchange notes and also points being made, which are quite public goods and also economic development. And geographic boundaries do not determine the movement of people in their spaces. That's one. Not only people who are looked at as problematic, but also the goods and services and the skills from agriculture to the city centers. There is that relationship, that interface that continues. So we need therefore to look on urban planning policies and regulations with that understanding that the two spaces are not as dichotomous as might be said. That's the first issue to make. The second issue regards urbanization and migration. A point has been made around cyclical migration, a point that I think as a university, we once engaged as a senior demographer, instead as around the issue of cyclical migration and how it impacts on fiscal allocation in the Eastern Cape from national government fiscals, and how is that calculated or computed. And we have observed that about 3 billion is lost in the Eastern Cape to the national fiscals for other provinces, because it is understood that, or stats indicate that the people are moving, but there are no clear stats which indicate when are they coming back to access the services in the Eastern Cape. So the cyclicality of migration, therefore, tells that there has to be a continuing investment in infrastructure in the rural space. I'm raising this because as scholars, we don't see eye to eye on just this point. There is a general view that you may not invest in the rural space because anyway, people by 2050 shall be in the urban space. But we argue also that which space is that? Because the urban space itself is growing, hence other countries are talking about regional and territorial planning. We have to look on pre-urbanization, the trends currently happening in the Eastern Cape, where people are reinvesting along the N2 corridor Therefore, it means there is a new form of urbanization emerging in our context we need to look at. I will just leave perhaps on that. The most interesting part, but I think she puts it nicely in the sense that people take up the land and then do trading facilities. I think this raises an important issue about the tension between urban land market, urban policy itself, and the people. The issue of inclusion, the exclusive nature of the urban spaces is driven by existing regulations and policies, which must be tempered with to allow access to the urban space by everybody, irrespective of incomes. Program Director, I don't want to take much of your time, but I think those are the few reflections and observations one could make at this point. Thank you.
As Kamandla is going to moderate and make sum up and propose direction on the inputs that have been made, let me now invite Dr. Uba, just 3 minutes of your reflection and what you can recommend for this platform. Over to you, Doc. Your 3 minutes is now.
Good morning. Good morning. First, let me thank the organizers of this program for finding me worthy to contribute. What I'm going to do this morning is just to provoke debates of further reflections on the subject matter. It's important to identify poverty and inequality, and especially distribution of resources among cities, towns, subnational and national governments as part of the reasons for the increasing urbanization in Africa. As we all know, urbanization in Africa is one of the highest across the world, with a growth rate of 3.5% annually. And that is not sustainable given where we are today. So if we're able to address the issue of poverty and not rest of associated constraints, we'll be able to address that. But let me just give a quick solutions or recommendations of what we can do to begin to deal with those issues. The first thing I think we need to do is to address the issue of accessibility. Accessibility in the sense of between towns and within towns. If you check now, within Africa, the migration from different countries to others is also increasing urbanization. And we have scarce resources, availability of utilities in order to take care of these things. So in order to do that, we will expect government, both at the national and subnational level, to create opportunities for businesses and for individuals to thrive even at the local areas, and also look at the issue of transportation that will give them access to locations that they need to be at one time or the other. The next thing that needs to happen is the business environment. There are things that needs to be in place to make business thrive. You find out that most businesses are moving to the urban areas, which also put pressure on the urban areas. So in terms of allocation of fiscal and functional responsibilities, it's also important that the subnational and national governments distribute these resources in an equitable manner that promotes development not just at the urban areas, but at the subnational areas, such that people who are where we call the rural areas will also remain there to develop those areas and also create the market for their products and services. Then finally is what I call about the fiscal and the economic distribution. For instance, where I come from in Africa, in Nigeria, you find out that most of the monies are allocated to the federal at the mercy of the federal government, and I'm sure that's what happens in most African countries, where power resides more at the national. So it's important that we begin to look at fiscal decentralization, and not just decentralization in political issues, but more in fiscal issues, so that the subnational governments or subnational rural areas will begin to do those things that the federal government or national government is doing. In so doing, you find out that you have, yes, it might not be equal development, but you reduce the inequality that is currently in existence at the national or what you call the urban and the rural area. When that happens, You see there, and also the transportation issues and building. Part of the planning, I heard one of the speakers spoke. Part of the planning is that we must begin to think to build vertically and no longer horizontally. We think we have enough land space, but we do not have enough land space in Africa as it were. So we need to think in terms of our buildings to begin to build vertically so that we'll allow more land for agriculture and other activities that will jumpstart and sustain our economy, and also deal with the issue of climate change that comes with urbanization. I think that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. Dr. Chiwike Uba, for that input as you are enriching this discussion this morning. Honorable guest, we are now approaching 11:20, and I think we've got only 3 comments from distinguished delegations to this meeting before we cross over to Professor Mongoma Masuche, who is now trying to be in a very settled area in Durban, so that he can make his official input also before we invite Professor Zondi to moderate and summarize the discussions. Let me now quickly invite Honorable Kasungu, a former Minister of Energy and current Ambassador of Kenya, to make his presentation. Honorable, please take the stage. Okay, seemingly is not yet connected. Let me now invite the next speaker to make a few remarks and comments and possible recommendation to be tabled here. Honorable Charity Ngilu, which is a governor of Kitui County, Republic of Kenya. Can I now invite you? I don't know whether distinguished honorable members are in this platform. Honorable Kasungu? There is no indication, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests. Also, Honorable Charity Ngilu, I don't seem to get an indication either. And those that are connected who are in a position to write in our chat box, they can do so. Our team is ready to take all the comments, questions, so that we can summarize the presentation. I'm also going to be dispatched to all the guests and invitees in this session, so that all the presentations that we have listened to, you will be in a position to get them at the tail end or in the next few days. In the absence of the Honorable Kasungu, the Minister of Energy and the current Ambassador to Kenya, as well as Honorable Ngilu of Kitui County in Kenya, I will now invite our own Honorable MEC, Honorable Ponsiwe, to make comments and recommendations as part of the input and deliberations. And immediately thereafter, surely Professor Masuha will be ready, and immediately we call Professor Zondi to make summaries, and moderating that, we go for resolution of this session and we close the very important commemoration. May I now invite you, Honorable MEC, to take the podium.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Greetings to all distinguished guests and honorable members and all people that are watching from various areas of the African continent.
And we be showing your face, Honorable MEC, you are live on TV.
Where is my face?
Maybe it's
Where is my face? I do see my face. Where is it?
I hope, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, really it's an honor for Human Settlement to be in this platform in the Eastern Cape. We would like to just share our experience and plans.
Thank you so much, and basically welcome.
Sorry, can everybody mute?
So we
Sorry, Honorable MEC, just a second.
Because we have a chapter in that country. So basically, this is a global event where now we get to.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Yes, as the human settlement of the Eastern Cape, we have a long-term plan that we call master plan that seeks to to aid government in making informed decision on strategic approach on the rolling out of its partial human settlement delivery plan. Yes, we must acknowledge that for now, we are still having a problem of just building houses instead of human settlement. But going forward with our human settlement spatial plan, we are going to reach that point. Yes, it is a long term to address this gap. We're taking consideration on the spatial location of both the existing and future settlements in townships, future housing projects, and in the rural context. The informal settlements that are growing in urban areas as a result of really moving people, communities to urban areas to seek for better opportunities, greener pastures, and jobs. Therefore, the department is having a program of upgrading these informal settlements that to maintain the dignity of our communities. The informal settlement upgrading program, which provides the essential basic services like provision of water and sanitation, refuse collection, electricity, access, roads, and tenure security, so that at least you change their situation, because already they are there, you can't avoid that. There is also an arrangement by the department with an opportunity to effectively implement the district development model. As the speakers before me have raised that this needs a concerted effort of working together with all the role players. So with the district development model approach, it involves all the spheres of government, both at the provincial, district level, and local, including the municipalities that we build our houses on, and the traditional leadership, also including the civic society organizations, so that at least we know that everybody is involved in improving the setup of the communities. The department also is building the multi-purpose community centers, which we believe in rural areas. We should believe that those are the centers that are one-stop shop of all departments and the activities, so that people are not traveling so far or long distances to get some resources in towns. They are then built in rural areas. We have a few that we have already built. We are intending to build more. There is also a program called Social Housing Development Program. That's to accommodate those officials or those people that are earning a little bit of money, who cannot qualify for the mortgage bond, but who also do not qualify to get an RDP house. So those social housing program at least accommodates those. We are really trying to address the old apartheid era spatial inequalities through urban restructuring and urban regeneration. So yes, by populations moving from rural areas to urban areas to seek for greener pastures, job opportunities. We really want to stress this point, that we're having a very serious problem on the formula of allocation of funds. As the speakers before me have raised that our people, our communities in the Eastern Cape are in the urban areas like your Western Cape, Gauteng, and other provinces. That makes us suffer in terms of the population, the results of the population, because the Stats SA, when they do their census, they do it during the course of the year. And those communities that are residing in urban areas, they come back either during December time, holidays, or when they retire, and then pose the burden in the Eastern Cape, for it is not accommodated in terms of budget allocation. So most of the people that are from Eastern Cape are not counted in this formula when budget is allocated. Therefore, it leaves us with a strain of being under budgeted as a population as a result of the States SA. Otherwise, we take the comments, we are improving the lives of the people. We are intending to turn, as other speakers said, our setup is really a little bit different. We want to urbanize our rural areas, like building them houses, so that you avoid them moving from rural areas to urban areas. We're trying out, but we can't do it alone. We must work together with the departments called Dr. Da, so that in their section of rural development, the community, the rural areas are developed. You create housing projects that are very beautiful, habitable in the rural areas, so that at least you see there is an improvement in the rural areas, because the Eastern Cape is a rural province. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable MEC. That is our provincial minister, if I may say, for those who don't understand the architecture of our constitutional character. She's the MEC responsible for human settlements in the province of the Eastern Cape. And that depth of knowledge is an indication that we are in a position to contribute continentally as we commemorate and celebrating this important day. It is really a true fact that urbanization is part of our living. On that note, honorable members, I am informed that Prof is just settling in less than 3 minutes. We will be linking with him. And I just, whilst we are waiting for that confirmation, may I now invite, as part of our discussions, Ms. Nyakan June. I think it's the founder of Timeless Women of Wonder organization. Just 3 minutes to reflect on this important day, ma'am, if it's possible from where you are linking from. I've already invited Honorable Kasungu, but unfortunately there was no response, and Honorable Charity Ngilu. May I invite you to take your 3 minutes or less, if it's possible, whilst I'm getting an indication from Prof's side, so that we can take that formal presentation. Ms. Nyakan, I've been seeing you in the video. I'm inviting you to make a short comment. I can see, Prof, you are almost ready to make a presentation. I wanted you to be comfortable where you are. That's why I was inviting our last comment from Ms. Nyakan June, but seemingly she is unable now to talk. I've seen the video before, just a few seconds ago. But if she's not ready, then, and I can say that you are almost ready that side. Now I will just invite you to take the podium and address this important commemoration, Africa Day, and say congratulations for landing so well that side. And we're informed that you have been invited quickly, as you wanted to have this conversation from Johannesburg, but we are now in KZN is still fine, you've managed to join. May I then request you to walk us through your presentation, and we shall engage thereafter. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, thank you very much for this introduction. I would like to start by apologizing for coming late. This was due to commitments that actually came up last night. So I had to leave Pretoria and Johannesburg to come down here. But also, secondly, I think it's important, this day is quite important for me, because it was on this day when I did my inaugural professorial lecture, and therefore I'm also celebrating, it's an anniversary for me. I was given a topic to address this important forum. The title is the Microeconomic Policy Making South Africa as a means of promoting urbanization. I thought as a way of introduction, I should say that the microeconomic policy making in South Africa since the dawn of democracy in 1994 has always been characterized by shifts from a freedom charter aligned reconstruction and development program to Keynesian growth, employment and redistribution strategy, which was referred to as GAME, and also accelerated growth initiative of South Africa as GISA. And of course, after that came the new growth path. And now we're talking about the National Development Plan, and some of the key scholars are Bond and Ngomete, whose work can be referred to. Now, the key focus or the focal points of these microeconomic policies are the following. One, It's actually measuring the performance of the economy. That's one. Number two, the monetary sector, especially fiscal and monetary development and international trade. Some scholars do refer to the founding fathers and mothers of the democratic dispensation in South Africa. At that time, hoped to achieve full employment, price of payments, and also the welfare programs such as free basic water, which was introduced in South Africa in 2001, free basic electricity at the time as it was the aim, free housing projects earmarked for the indigent households was meant to ensure an equitable and redistribution of income and wealth. One of the clauses of the Freedom Charter of 1995 highlighted the following: there shall be houses, security, and comfort, close quote. This clause drove the democratic dispensation to provide access to housing, which is a fundamental human right, but its provision remains based on the adequate budget to ensure the realization of this right. Linked to this right is the provision of free basic water, which is a constitutional obligation. However, most district and metropolitan councils rely on equitable share, municipal infrastructure grant and allocations derived from the Division of Revenue Act in terms of ensuring that indigent households continue to access about free basic water and access to sanitation, even in informal settlements. Measures such as installation of solar home systems and solar water heating programs were instituted to ensure that indigent households get access to basic electricity estimated to about 50 to 100 kilowatts provided for in the RDP document. Steps were undertaken to link access to basic water to access to basic electricity as a commitment of the democratic government to ensure that even in informal settlements and in deep rural areas, the clause of the Freedom Charter, and I quote again, there shall be houses, security and comfort is realized. In urban centers of South Africa, unlike rural areas where households access water and sanitation through boreholes and community standpipes shared by households situated in the entire village, pit latrines with ventilation, people get access to water through standpipes and public facilities such as chemical toilets, which are regarded as inadequate according to the sanitation policy promulgated in 1996. As much as municipalities with adequate budgets such as City of Johannesburg, eThekwini, City of Ekurhuleni, Nelson Mandela Metro Council, City of Cape Town and Tshwane Metropolitan Council managed to provide more than that in terms of the free basic water, and of course dealing with some of the challenges with pit latrines, chemical toilets, as well as septic tanks in each of the 5-year terms when such pits are full. In most cities, informal dwellers are often subjected to lack of housing. I would like to submit that South Africa adopted a developmental state approach with a strong social justice and welfare state, subsidization of free water, free basic water, electricity, and access to a shelter in the form of social housing. The microeconomic policies adopted since the dawn of democracy in 1994 limit these fundamental and constitutional rights. I would like us to know that. Promoting a welfare and a developmental state approach requires steps to achieve this. And this is what I would like to propose. First, it's full employment. 2, price stability. 3, sustainable economic growth and economic development. 4, a favorable balance of payments. 6, import substitution industrialization, and the last one is equitable and redistribution of wealth and income. And these are major challenges that we should be looking at. Let us look at unemployment and full employment that I have indicated earlier. First one, and all workers are employed, all machinery is fully utilized, and the productive capacity of industries is actualized. This also implies that all the arable land is fully utilized. And I know that I'm touching on a raw nerve here, especially when you're talking about access to land. and whose land and who occupies land, and how do people occupy land. And also further in this regard, mechanized and cultivated, and the Green Revolution should be adopted in this regard. This is premised on the fact that unemployment causes social and political instability, and therefore any form of unemployment should be seen as a loss in potential production, because unemployment results in loss of income and purchasing power. Now let's come to the point that I raised about price stability. In most of the demands of the trade unions and workers, you will have seen that on TV and read it in newspapers. The focus is on salary increase, which is above the inflation, especially in country in a country with inflation targeting macroeconomic strategies. Price instability in prices of consumer goods above average grocery basket affect unemployment and indigent households. And I think this is the case now with the coronavirus, which is now upon us. This is a very serious challenge. Economic growth, the poor contribute is in most of rural economies, such as the Eastern Cape Province, Limpopo, KZN, and Mpumalanga, affect the provision of wealth in terms of how this should be addressed. Content regulation, government ration, firm subsidies and cheap credit by establishing marketing boards and taxing primary exporters. In this case, and on this day, when we are celebrating Africa Day, my argument, having been given this topic, Chairperson, is that it is time that we should indigenize our approaches to development of our communities. I would like to end here, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I think the audience is quite listening, and I think you have tried your best, and we can understand that you landed at the airport, but you were quite audible, you were quite clear. And I think as we proceed with our program, we still have some few minutes before I invite Professor Zondi to make a bit of moderation and summary of the proceedings of the day. But just to take 1 or 3 people as part of conversation, because this is not only a presentation forum, it's a conversation and engagement. I will now request Ms. Nyakan June to make a few comments. And honored members, I think just before 12 o'clock, as we are going to receive our moderation and summary at that time, let me just unmute your mic as well as your video, and then you make a short recommendation. You can mute your mic, Prof, that side, I understand. Ms. Nyakan, please take the podium. I can also see you through the show of hands so that I can note those who want to make a comment. We still have a bit of 10 minutes to engage, and then Professor Zondi is almost ready to moderate the program immediately thereafter and deliver some summaries of presentations. So you can indicate either in chat box or through the show of hand. I will be able to notice. I'm just inviting Ms. Nyakan June as part of discussions. But I don't know what is happening now. If she's not there, you are at liberty to indicate if you want to make a short comment, members of the session. Ms. Nyakan?
For Africa's socio-economic liberation. If you look at the matters of housing and urbanization, I think Africa has a great opportunity to, really replanning and engineer the whole housing and opportunity right now. When you're looking at the matter at migrations, you're looking at devolution and trying to develop even our most rural areas. I think there's no better time than this, and for legislators to put in place policies that create enabling environments for us to re-engineer our urbanization. One of the things that I have actually observed, even in the work that we do a lot of skills development, empowerment in the traditional sectors, construction, and the infrastructure sectors. And we've actually realized the direct impact that quality of life through decent living and access to. I think looking at how we are structuring, enabling our public service, offerings, and bringing in our green, green housing, our green. Important that Africa begins to look at innovating its materials, innovating the kind of tools we're using and processes we're using and the models we're using for housing. When we look back at our ancestors, they built up their houses out of soil, out of mud, out of clay, out of earth. And when you study housing and urbanization plans, in the developed nations, especially when you look at a case study in Texas, you realize that they are moving forward to earth domes because they realize that scientifically, the earth domes are the most economical ways of doing housing in this urbanized generation, because during winters, the earth produces heat that keeps the families warm, and during harsh hot weathers it cools because it takes temperatures from the earth, the depth of the earth. So I think there's no better time as legislators looking at this serious subject of urbanization and housing, and looking at the whole migrations and the planning that we need to look forward so that we see how we can innovate based on our context, our available materials, our skill, not just creating an ecosystem of housing, creation within that ecosystem, so that as we are continuing to develop, we're actually continuing as well to create an ecosystem of economic transformation. I'm really, really honored that you did give us time, and even representing our member states who are on, our country member states are actually on the call because and engaging with you as an enabler and an implementation partner. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for this quite enlightening input and presentation. Honourable members, honoured guests, I'm reliably informed that Honourable Kasungu is unable to connect. I think there are technical difficulties, as well as Honourable Ngilu. They are really unable, but I think the presentation that we received is an indication that Africa can coordinate and collaborate on various experiences through these platforms. Without much ado, I was expecting honourable members, South Africa, Eastern Cape CPA, and members of our legislature, if one or two can make comments before we invite Professor Zondi. Is there no taker from your side from the presentation that has been made, or your own input? We are now left with less than 5 minutes for moderation. No taker. Professor Zondi, this now is the time that I must invite you. You have managed to capture the hearts and minds of the presenters. I think you are well positioned to understand the excitement and the exuberance of the people of the continent at this moment, and capture that mood of celebrating Africa, the birthday of 54 countries. And indeed, I want now to hand over to you to do what you know best, to moderate and make summary of this important platform. You are invited to take the podium, sir. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated, Honorable Mlibo Koboshian, our leader. We are inspired by your moderation up to this point, and thank you very much. And also wants to appreciate the speaker and the leadership of the legislature and everybody who helped put this together. I think the reason why I am here is to open up the conversation a little bit more and open it to people who are perhaps out there itching to give their own bite about how do we, because that's the question that we're facing here, how do we link the different efforts at urbanization management so that we enable the creation of sustainable urban spaces and sustainable rural spaces that coexist side by side. That means recognizing that there are different efforts. What are the government efforts that are out there? What if those efforts were linked a little better with the efforts of business, with the efforts of communities themselves, with efforts of community organizations, with efforts of indigenous leaders, sometimes called traditional leaders, with efforts of cultural activists, with efforts just of all other actors and international actors that come here. How do we link those in a manner that doesn't clash, that does not leave gaps in between? Link them in a manner that enabled us to have sustainable urban places. Those efforts may relate to better managing the migration between urban areas and rural areas. Of course, as we've heard already, we have to disabuse the view that people are moving from rural areas to urban areas. It's not quite true. There's a circulation of people between urban areas and rural areas. If we understood that, what would we do differently? If we understood that it was not an urban migration, but it was a circulation between urban and rural, how would we respond to that? In the same way that we ask people who are thinking about urban, rural areas, about what does it mean that you have these people who come in big numbers, who have capital in their hands, ideas in their heads, have skills because of their jobs, who come to the rural areas for at least about 4 or 5 months in a year. In December, in June, during Easter holidays. What does it mean to be visited by millionaires as rural areas? These are people who are millionaires, who are also highly skilled people. What does it mean to be visited by them for 4 months in a year? And how do we harness that and turn it into a great worker? What does it mean to be to develop in a planned way in the urban areas? How do we factor the fact that we have these people who come to the urban areas and they live for a period of time? Urban areas have a different question from the rural areas in the sense that, Honorable Koboshiana, whereas we talk about rural areas as getting people who love the rural areas, but make their monies, grow their skills, and do everything in the urban areas. But they love the rural areas, which is why, in spite of low conditions, they still come back to the rural areas. So they have to think about how to harness those people while they are there. But the urban areas have a different one. What does it mean to have this really using it to do work? They're not there to live. They're not there to stay. They simply just want a shelter temporarily while they are doing whatever they do and go back to a place they call home. I grew up among a people who call rural areas home and call urban areas the places of work in terms of Pangal. What does it mean to have large numbers of people who are not with you permanently, but they are there simply to visit you, simply to stay there for a long time? Your attitudes of development planning there will be different from the rural areas who are having people who are not with them for a long time, but who are there with their hearts and come there for only 4 months in a year. What does that all mean? What does it mean that we are now told that digitization is bridging the gap? Even schools, even rural schools, I come from the rural schools of the Umvoti valleys in KZN, even schools there, they are connecting to schooling through the online system. So there is a bridging of the spaces between the urban and the rural areas. So we are getting a sense of urban infrastructure coming into rural areas. What does that mean? Are there opportunities to harness with that? But this digitization may also lead to a digital divide because of differences in the access to basic data and stuff like that. What does it mean that the infrastructure linkages remain unconnected. What could be the role of different players to make sure that infrastructure does not end at the beginning of a rural area and that it goes on all the way? And very critically, which is something that the national government really pushed very hard from about 1997, what do we deal with? How do we deal with the urban that is in the rural area? There is an urban in the rural areas, what we call country towns. If we think about Buffalo in the Eastern Cape, if we think about Komani, if we think about Alice, Alice these are towns, but they're in the rural areas. They're a particular type of town. So you can't use one form of town planning for all forms of towns. Buffalo needs a different customization of urban planning to that you might need in Kabeja. So what does it mean to redevelop the small towns or the outskirts of that? Ms. Laura Serobe mentioned the cultural heritage and potential for tourism. A lot of it revolves around these small towns. Because if you look at the big graves, I mean the graves of John X. Bokwe, who lived in Scotland, who is celebrated in Scotland in a number of cultural efforts. For those people to come to see the grave, they would need urban development in the town of Alice. What does it mean to do this urban development in the rural towns? And how do you do that by harnessing the potential, the treasures that Ms. Gloria Sorobo was mentioning in there? There are many questions we need to deal with. Perhaps at this point, we'll open up the floor for questions and answers and for comments from the floor. And I would ask that the honorable members and the participants indicate by show of hand, raise your hand in the system so that it will be given a floor. Make it no more than 1.5 minute comment or question so that we give as many people as possible in the next 30 minutes to give their comments. Thank you very much. Can I see if there is any show of hands? Anyone wants to make a contribution? Please show your hands.
And really find out the way forward for myself. In my communication, I mentioned some of the legal and policy frameworks that Uganda has put in place in bid to have an orderly urbanization in our country. And one of that I quoted was the National Urban Policy. And I kept referring to National Urban Policy, National Development Plan, National Housing Policy. When I say national, I think it gives you an idea of a national policy that is intended to be applied everywhere. And in your comments, when you were winding up, you mentioned something like a national urbanization plan can't be successfully implemented in all areas of the country, in all parts of the country, because each and every area has its own dynamics that must be put into context while you're planning. So what I just wanted to understand is that what I'm getting from your presentation is, yes, we can have the national urbanization policies and all those other policy and the legal frameworks that govern it, but we must put a window for the domestication of these policies. For our local people in the local governments to look at the national planning policy, don't apply it as it is, but domesticate it to suit the prevailing circumstances and dynamics.
Was that a network issue? But we got a point. We just got a point about the localization, very important point, localization of policies and localization of plans. That is very. Hello?
We can hear you, Prof. You can proceed.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay. I think we lost Barbara somehow. And let me just take one more before we get responses. A comment from Katie. Happy Africa Day, Katie. You have the floor. Katie or
Happy Africa Day. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Thank you so much. Happy
I can
Africa
hear
Day
you very clearly. Yes.
All on this platform this morning. It's been a very enlightening session with very interesting presentations from all who presented. I just want to highlight a couple of things, which is the across Africa, the growing population of young people. Because when you talk about urbanization, a lot of places actually means rural, urban, or implication. You have to think about becoming more and more scarce, where job creation is getting to be a very big challenge for a lot of leaders, governments across the country. And if you put all of these things together, then you see that the urbanization is coming with very serious challenges. Services, there's pressure on these services. So policies must take into consideration expansion of services to rural areas and modernizing our rural communities so that they have services, there are job opportunities, there are good roads, so that people don't necessarily feel that they have to move to a city before they can have a shot at success in this world. I think it's a very important thing because from in Ghana, where I am, we are now, the urban population is now bigger than the rural population over a very short period, over the last 15 years or so. We now have a majority urban population. And it's not because, yes, services are expanding, but it's mainly because most people, most young people are trooping to cities where they think that they have a better shot at a bright future. So definitely it's important. Housing and all of those things are important. The other link is that we must begin to see these challenges as opportunities for private sector. Because if we are going to build schools, if we are going to build homes, then it's important to rope in the private sector because most governments are strapped for cash so that they can help in ensuring that a policy around modernization of communities, not necessarily urbanization, but modernization of communities so that everybody has access to good schools, clean water, electricity, good services from the public sector and all of that. That, I think, is an important issue that we must look at in this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to just take, thank you very much, Kathy. Much appreciated. Our greetings to great country of Ghana. I'm just going to get Ndakani and as the last one before I invite, I see Ma'am Gloria is already here. I'm going to invite them to respond to some of the questions and make quick comments. But I'm taking Ndakani as the last opportunity now before we get responses. Ndakani, you have the floor. Happy Africa Day.
Thank you. Happy Africa Day to you, sir. And good afternoon to everyone, all protocol observed. I am very much inspired by the discussions that have been made here. I just wanted to comment. I think somehow Kathy touched on what I wanted to speak to. The issue of the impact on young people, that is the fact children and the young people, the youth, in these trends that we are seeing of people moving from the rural to the urban spaces, that we find ourselves that we have high drug abuse, high crime in the urban areas. But when you look around, you realize that there is no response mechanism that has been put in place. And that burden should not only be on government, should also be in the private sector, so that you have recreation spaces. Because as you know, that young people's minds, they need that recreation, they need to be developed, and having a lack of parks where people now are habiting, and also no sports fields, then truly people just work and come into those homes. And remember, some of the spaces that people live in, I think this sardine type, sardine pack style that you see, I'm not sure, maybe there is some form of regulation that while that is not something that is regulated by government, but some form of changing the way people set themselves up also in these areas, because you find that it will be one shack next to the other, one shack. All I'm saying is that as people are already invading the spaces, why not give yourself more room also for children to be able to play outside? But you find that there is no one who's actually looking into that, so that even when things like the fires that break up, that destroy the homes, one home burns, then all of them are then burning. So there is work that needs to be done. Because this is the situation currently. We may not be able to reverse it, but we need to say what are the policies that can be put in place to try and start to regulate those kind of things. Also, I think lastly that I want to comment on is around the issue of the water and sanitization in this whole move that we're seeing. That when people move to the urban areas, I was commenting, I think the other day, to some colleagues to say, we're going up from between Bishop, where we are, and East London, the N2, and saying that, there's more houses that are coming up here. And I was saying, you know what, these cities around here, they never prepared themselves for the kind of influx that we are then seeing. And even the roads themselves, they're starting to take a beating, because even our planning has not been in such a way that your water and sanitization infrastructure would then be responding to that. Your roads maintenance would be responding to that. And therefore, there really is some change in the way that we think and we plan a government, the private sector, that we need to consider when we are looking at what we are then facing today. Thank you very much.
Siabule, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Prior planning, anticipation, accommodating changes. That's very interesting. Now we go back to the presenters. Ma'am Gloria Sirobe, you are the first one. You can take a bite and add whatever comment. You have your 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, moderator. I really appreciate that. And I think the other presenters, it's very interesting to learn from the rest of the world and take what we can take from there. Here is my point, moderator. The deliberate exclusion of the Eastern Cape from the economic mainstream of the country, it takes many forms, and some of it very systemic. The security of tenure means that the investors cannot easily come to this province and throw money at something which they cannot have a perfection of security. So the answer is always going to be no. The deliberate lack of roads access means that at your best of times, you cannot do what gets done in other places. Tourism, we are competing with the rest of the world. Croatia has got the same things we're offering, but they have the roads to get there, we don't.
Yes.
And the distances and the gravel roads and the rain terrain and all of that, anyone who has to choose between going to Croatia and coming here, choose to Croatia because he or she will get there. Livestock, we always say that this province has more livestock unit than any other place, but they are not worthy of being taken into the mainstream market because the resources to make it work are actually not there. We have natural endowment. Luckily, the weather cannot be affected by anyone. We are sorted there. The rainfalls are adequate to make it work. The point here is that the planning figures are always going to throw something negative because they're going to go and come back to it's not economical. So what one is saying here, moderator, is that we've got to be daring here. We've got to do the impossible. We've got to do and defy the planning figures and do what needs to be done for Eastern Cape, because it is a deliberate inclusion that we're trying to do against a deliberate exclusion that was actually done in the, I wanted to say, moderator. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much. And Your Excellency, the Ugandan ambassador, you want to respond to anything that has been raised, including that question that was raised by Mr. Koboshian about the corridors and the Cape to Cairo corridors and how to assist in all of them. Your Excellency, the High Commissioner of Uganda, you want to respond to that?
I don't know if I'm audible.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. I should say that I had an interruption with my connection and I missed the question about the corridors that you're referring to.
There was
I comment on that.
Yeah.
I didn't speakers that have spoken since morning, and one like this one, and I totally agree with such a speaker. I think we need to intensify our interaction across the year, throughout the year, for us to ensure that the African continent is moving at the same pace in line with developments in our. I should say yes, and I think this has been evidenced by the recent ratification of various countries to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I think that is enough testimony to assure our people and to build hope in them that such commitments are still on course. And we have our regional economic blocks, the COMESA, the EAC, the SADC, all these ones are still very, very vibrant. And actually coming into force of the AFTA, I think this is one force or one fora that we are going to see many of these economic regional blocks coming together to work on mutual forms of infrastructure across our countries and across the continent. So I believe that we are still on course, and what we need to do is just to intensify what we do together as Africa. One challenge that we are having is that agriculture, our countries are doing very well in terms of agriculture. But what happens is that we sell our produce in raw form to the European countries, and then they bring it back after beneficiation for us to buy again at very high costs. What we need to do is to build the capacity as the African continent. Build the capacity. We have enough natural resources. We have enough agriculture realm on our side. We can build on this and ensure that we build now a capital base, because only desiring to have Africa interconnected, to have Africa develop together, we cannot do that just by mere wishing. We need to have plans on paper in black and white, but we need finances to actually actualize or implement this. So these wishes, these commitments are still on course, but we are now trying to see how we can build up resource mobilization and resource growth, economic growth, and also build the capacity in terms of international relations. Relations is also very, very important. How we relate as neighbors, how we relate as countries on the African continent, all these shall ensure that all these projects are on course and are implemented in due course. I think that is what I can comment as of now, Professor Sunday.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'm going to then ask Professor Masuka if you have some comment on what has been raised briefly, and if it is fine. So I am going to ask Professor, it's possible that Professor Mbanga can't hear me or stuff. Dr. Uba. Is Dr. Uba still here? I see Dr. Uba is still here. Dr. Uba, can you hear me? And I'm going to also invite Honorable Konsiwa. If she is still here, if she has some views, especially about that part which was raised earlier about the need to localize national development plans. In South Africa, we have this district model of delivery model it's called, which is an attempt to try and localize all these beautiful but national level plans, so that whatever you have at the national level, we have a version of it for a particular locality that responds to the particular circumstances of that locality. Because we've now known, and we've known it also from the European experience, the East Asian experience, especially the Japanese experience, that national policies have huge limitations. They cross over many particularities, many particular circumstances of very particular areas. So they need localization. Just as you talk about decentralization of power, but you need also localization of the actual thinking. If there is a national house to a particular district, and a particular area, a particular city, a particular urban area, because the circumstances there may need to be taken into account. I don't know whether we have another.
Thank you, Professor. I am here. Thank you very much. I can't agree more with you, what you have just said now, that localization is very key in our approach. Hence, we have adopted through the presidential pronouncement of the district development model, because the Eastern Cape is a very rural province. So it is very unique in its own way. So when we are creating or implementing some policies, there are those that are going to who are not going to be able to address some challenges in other areas of the province to suit the situation in each and every district of the Eastern Cape. For example, if you talk about the Graafreinet, which is in Sarah-Batman, is totally different from what is happening or the setup of the Buffalo City Metro, yet as a district municipality. So we really need that setup or the review of some certain policies. Otherwise, we really agree with the localization system of processing to address the real different needs of the province. I also want to comment on the migration or movement of the youth to cities with intention to look for greener pastures, job opportunities, and other general opportunities. We really need that. We don't know what happened to our youth in tertiary institutions, how they behave, more than them looking at doing what they have gone there to do in terms of education. But when you're looking at their lifestyles and their behavior, it is a worrying factor. Really, as a continent, we need to look closely, to those effects, the drug abuse, the behavior. At some point, when I was having a meeting with the traditional leadership, I asked them, what are they telling their young boys when they've gone through the initiation school? Because we are producing a generation that is really behaving in a manner that is really unacceptable. So we need to encompass all these, as much as we are building houses as the Department of Human Settlement for people and prioritizing the destitute young people. But we must also look at the setup and how they are, their lifestyle, how they are being brought up, and their socialization, because it impacts negatively in the growth of the young people. Those are the issues that I think we need to look at, the review of the policies, because most of this situation. Thank you very much, Prof.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. May I take an advantage of your presence? You are the servant of the people, so we can take advantage of you. There was an issue raised about the cities being, these rural towns being sources of raw material, and that there is a lot of thinking that could go into turning that into not just supplying, but into more greater raw material. And the Eastern Cape has a lot of very historic rural town, and many of us in the areas will go there to visit, relax and stuff. But whether we take that a step further and make it drivers of economy, like Ms. Gloria Sirobo was saying earlier about, this is what is happening in Bulgaria. They really are taking up on the basis of simply revitalizing this part and the small little towns which have a history, which have a potential. What is the thinking about that, Honorable Consumer?
Thank you, Prof. The thinking around this is to have a deliberate, concerted effort of working together and involve all other provincial departments, like your department. The Department of Udea is the one that must look closely into the development of these small towns. DKME as in Alice is a very big town that is hosting a university that is a history of the struggle heroes and heroines. The Graf Reinet, small as it is, they produce a very rare product of the fair, that is fair wool, because they have this unique livestock produce that they have there. Each small town in the province of the Eastern Cape has its own way of economic growth. For it needs to be at least empowered and fed into the economic of the whole province. That can lead. For instance, in Ado, a small town beyond the Kabeja, they produce the best oranges that are the first grade of those are exported. And then we remain with the, of course, the third grade. We are told in the world, the Eastern Cape has the best first grade oranges throughout the world, but we don't get that in terms of influencing the economy of this province, in terms of promoting those to be the best produce of the whole country. Even the livestock and the meat, the livestock that produces meat for the province is the best one, as they are the ones that are coming from the Eastern Cape. So this concerted effort of the integrated planning, working together with all other spheres of government throughout the African continent, can assist and empowering other countries of Africa in terms of bringing the rich economy to the whole country or to the whole continent. Thank you.
Sabule, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for those thoughts. Thank you to the other speakers for very stimulating thought. At this point, I'm going to invite Mr. T. Matiwane, the MPL, and I don't know, I need to hand over back to Honorable Koboshian for that. But I thank you very much for your input.
Asante. Enkosi Prof, enkosi kakhulu ngomsebenzi omhle kangaka. I think uliphakamisile izinga lale nkqubo. You have really escalated the level of this engagement and dialogue. And without really much ado, Prof, and for your best facilitation of this item, let me now invite the presentation of the resolutions as they were being captured. And Honorable Matiwane is also the member of the executive of this CPA Eastern Cape branch, and also the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on COCTA in the province of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, to make such presentation so that as we disembark, journey back home, visiting Africa in its parts, we are quite clear of what was the resolution of this important commemorative webinar. Honorable Matiwane, I think possible they will be flighted as well, and surely as part of the package of this session, we are going to send each and every copy to every member joining this meeting. Over to you, sir. You can take it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker and the Chair of the session. Allow me to present what we've managed to capture during these stimulating discussions and conversations made by esteemed guests and visitors. We might have captured some of the recommendations, but we may not have captured everything else. But we have tried our best to ensure that the thrust of the discussions, all of them, we have managed to capture them. We'll start with the declaration, Honorable Chairperson, by participants. We, the participants of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, Eastern Cape Subnational Branch, gathered on the 25th of May 2021 to commemorate Africa Day with a view of linking the urbanization management efforts of different role players towards sustainable urban spaces as a theme of this for this webinar. Acknowledging that as it promotes national building through unity and freedom from oppression. Highlighting the aspirations contained in the AU's Agenda 2063 in making African cities more habitable, as well as seeking to deliver inclusive and sustainable development as espoused by CPA Africa Regions, Objectives and Program of Action. 1, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. And an Africa where development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially women and youth, and caring for children. Understanding that our struggle for a better life in South Africa, as enshrined in the international relations policy, is intertwined with the country's pursuit of a better Africa and a better world. Appreciating that celebrating Africa Day in May, as agreed by member states, presents an opportunity for South Africa, including asylum seekers, to reconnect and recommit themselves in the ravages of urbanization and displacement, often considered the future of prosperity in the developing world. Resolve to identify new initiatives to ensure a lasting solution to avert urbanization as it leads to overpopulation of cities and towns. Promoting the harnessing of digital innovations and public participation in light of new normal, and implementation of steps to improve accountability mechanisms, oversight and lawmaking, as governments need to account about plans initiated to curb urbanization. I agree, honorable members, that government spatial and urbanization planning should be COVID protocol sensitive, as increased urbanization tends to increase the number of inhabitants per square kilometer, the issue of urban and peri-urban areas. Therefore, resolves as follows. On thematical area number 1, private sector perspective, resolve that internet connectivity and technological advancement must be accelerated for communities in rural and peri-urban areas. The local government sector must ensure meaningful stakeholder engagement, urban development forum to ensure inclusivity, a holistic approach, strengthening of municipal forums, and capacity building of officials tasked with planning for urban development to ensure that planning precedes development. On policy making, honorable members and distinguished guests, government must encourage the plowing of resources and must invest in our small towns to ensure that they remain crucial links between their communities and economic nodes. And cities through commitment to the expansion of small town revitalization program as driven by Eastern Cape government. Spatial planning must ensure inclusivity of urban areas with specific reference to housing provision, as well as roads network infrastructure that will ensure accessibility of public transport services. And government must intensify efforts for economic development in rural areas as means of reducing the influx of citizens towards urbanized areas. On general resolutions, honorable chairperson of the session, the provincial equitable share formula must be reviewed in order to limit the adverse effects for rural province which experience extensive outward migration. The point made by Professor Mbanga earlier on. Number 2, government spatial and urbanization planning should be COVID protocol sensitive, as increased urbanization tends to increase the number of inhabitants per square kilometer urban and peri-urban areas. And last, agrarian reform as means of developing rural areas towards active participation in the mainstream economy. So we move, honorable chairperson. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Matiwa. Now put the recommendations as well as resolutions. Agreed. You can unmute. Well, on that note, I am now going to invite the representative of the Vice President of on my side, because it will be on the announcements. I think, Honorable President of our branch, this moment and this opportunity has been created for all of us because the inputs indeed have managed to phrase and create a scene. And I think presenters, as well as those that have researched their topics so well and input that have been made here, have awakened our memories and conscience. And I think because of your contribution and your participation, you have made us to value our diversity as people, traditions, our mutual compassion and respect, our hard work as people of the province. And I want to reaffirm the words as it is, umtu ngumtu ngabanye abantu, umuntu imuntu kabantu.
All of you honorable members who are TV and other media platforms. Permit me, Honorable Deputy Speaker, from the onset to pass my heartfelt apology on behalf of the Deputy Vice President. He could not be here today owing to a commitment that he has at Kamata Great. I am reminded, honorable members, of a speech that was delivered by Dr. A.P. Kluma in my apologies, honorable members. I got distracted. Dr. A.P. Kluma in 1941 made an address to a Congress of the African National Congress, and he said the following, and I will quote: "The fundamental basis of all wealth and power is the ownership and acquisition of freehold title to land. From land we derive our existence. We derive our wealth in minerals, food, and other essentials. On land we build our homes. Without land, we cannot exist." Close quote. And I would argue, Honorable, to indicated that as a province, we are known to have had or still do have a comparative advantage of human capital. And I would continue to argue that we have produced the best presidents, we have produced the best CEOs, the best DGs and captains of industry. The downside, however, to this is that we have had the brain drain in our rural province. And I think, honorable members, the question that begs now is the Constitution, that people have the right to movement. They can move everywhere. They can move from rural areas to urban areas. They can move from urban areas to townships and rural areas. The question that it perpetuates the inequalities that we are confronted with today. Honorable members, as I have indicated before, and I think one of the speakers here eloquently put it, that our policies as government, the NDP, you get a sense that as government, even though we have priorities that we have put in, has happened in the past, policies that cushion those who have, and praying and hoping that the profits that are made by those who have will trickle down to those that. And the declaration, particularly the government of the province of the Eastern Cape, we have taken it upon ourselves, particularly in the sixth term of government, to ensure that we disrupt the system that was there before. This is seen by our enthusiasm in ensuring that we revitalize our small towns. An example will be that of Alice Etikeni, wherein as government we have gone full-blown to ensure that we create trafficable streets, we create what is really symbolizing a university town, so as to ensure that those small towns who have a rich heritage are then attracting tourists, but also we have a program of small town revitalization that speaks to what we have coined, the Honorable Premier speaks eloquently on this, what we have coined as heritage tourism, because that as the province, we have of 10 were fought in this province, and that is the history that we ought to tell. That is where we ought to be making money, in ensuring that we attract investors to invest in these kinds of heritage sites, but also attract tourists to spend a lot of money in those tourist areas. We are known as the province to have a rich cultural craft. So by that, if we are to enhance that, we ought to be making a lot of money and really diversify our economy from dependency on auto sector as well as other sectors that are cringe, wherein we would be able to express ourselves in terms of beneficiation. But also, the eastern part of the Eastern Cape is rich in terms of agriculture, and that speaks to the government's eagerness to develop the Wild Coast SEZ in terms of ensuring that the trajectory we are taking as the province of the Eastern Cape has come from, so that there is sustainability in terms of the local economic development as well as the diversification of the economy by ensuring that we go full of the houses, that the eagerness of the government to ensure that we bring about the dignity that was lost during the apartheid regime and ensuring the security of tenure when we give title deeds to those who own these houses. And I want, on behalf of government, to commit that we will uphold and implement the resolutions of this sense. The world, Africa never needed.
Engage and start to chart aside. Thank you. Ambassador Masati, I can see you as well. Oh, my daughter. Thank you very much, honourable members. Mama Nyalambisa, welcome and thank you very much for joining. You look very beautiful as usual.